Caroline paused outside the fancy restaurant, glancing down at her beige dress covered in mud and coffee stains. At 59, she no longer cared much about appearances. The splashes of dirt came from helping her neighbor, Mrs. Wilson, rescue a runaway cat earlier that morning. The coffee stains were from her volunteer shift at the homeless shelter. Her hair was tied back in a no-nonsense bun, and her face, lined with years of experience, was makeup-free. 3 days earlier, her niece Rachel had begged her to come to this dinner. "Aunt Caroline, please, just try. He's kind, successful, and wants to meet someone real. What's the worst that could happen?" Caroline had thought the worst would be pretending to be someone she wasn't. But Rachel's hopefulness had worn her down. She meant to dress properly, but life had other plans: the escaped cat, the shelter's emergency call, and before she knew it, she had only 15 minutes to get across town. Now, standing at the restaurant's entrance, she felt out of place among the glittering guests. For a moment, she considered turning back to her cozy apartment filled with rescue cats and old furniture. But something, pride or plain curiosity, pushed her forward. Inside, the maitre d' eyed her with clear disapproval. "Can I help you?" he asked curtly. "Yes." "I have a reservation. Caroline Fisher. I'm meeting someone." After a skeptical glance, he checked the list. "Ah, yes. Mr. Whitmore is waiting. This way, please." As she followed him through the dining room, Caroline felt every stare. Women in designer dresses and men in tailored suits looked her up and down, whispering behind their napkins. She lifted her chin. She'd faced harder things in life than judgmental strangers. At a corner table by the window sat a man, early 40s, strikingly handsome, wearing a navy suit that screamed success. Caroline instantly thought, Rachel must be joking. "This man can't possibly be for me." "Mr. Whitmore, your guest has arrived," the maitre d' said stiffly. The man turned, and instead of the pity or disappointment she expected, his face broke into a warm, surprised smile. "Caroline," he said, his voice genuine and kind. She gave a small, awkward laugh. "Yes, and you must be the poor soul my niece convinced to meet me. I'm sorry about my appearance. It's been one of those days. I can leave if you'd rather not be seen with someone who looks like she wandered in by mistake." Instead of embarrassment, he laughed, really laughed, a deep, joyful sound that turned heads nearby. "Please sit," he said. "I'm Julian Whitmore, and honestly, you're the most refreshing person I've met in a long time." Caroline sat down carefully, unsure what to make of him. Julian gave the maitre d' a firm look that sent him scurrying away, then leaned forward with interest. "Tell me about your complicated day," he said. And she did. She talked about Mrs. Wilson's cat, the shelter's emergency call, and the mad rush to get here in time. When she finished, Julian shook his head in admiration. "Most people would have cancelled rather than show up like that," he said. "I'm not most people," Caroline replied, meeting his gaze. "I'm too old to pretend, and too tired to care what anyone thinks." Caroline took a quiet breath. "Let me be clear," she said. "If my honesty makes you uncomfortable, I can leave now and save us both the awkwardness." Julian shook his head. "It's not uncomfortable. It's remarkable." He leaned in slightly, his eyes steady on hers. "Do you know why I asked your niece to set this up? I've been on 37 dates this year, 37, and every one of them felt the same. The women said all the right things, wore perfect dresses, smiled at the perfect moments. But none of it felt real. It was like watching the same play over and over." He nodded toward her stained dress. "Then you walked in, wearing your day right on your clothes. You didn't pretend. You helped a neighbor, volunteered at a shelter, and still showed up. You weren't performing. You were just yourself. Do you know how rare that is?" Caroline felt something tighten in her chest. "You're serious?" "Completely," Julian said. "Tell me more. About your life. The real one, not the polished version people use on first dates." A waiter appeared, uncertain whether to serve a woman who looked so out of place. Julian smiled politely and ordered for both of them without even glancing at the menu. Then he turned back to Caroline as if nothing else in the room existed. So, she talked. She told him about losing her husband 20 years earlier, about raising 2 kids alone while working as a social worker. She told him about retiring 5 years ago, choosing to spend her time helping others instead of chasing leisure or luxury. She described her small apartment, her rescue cats, and her quiet but fulfilling routine at the shelter. Julian didn't interrupt once. He listened, really listened. When she finished, he sat back, thinking. "I run a foundation," he said finally. "We call it corporate social responsibility. Sounds noble, right? We give away millions every year. But it's all numbers and meetings and press releases. I can't remember the last time I helped someone directly. Maybe I never have." "Why not?" Caroline asked softly. He sighed. "Because I was too busy being important. I inherited my father's company at 25, and I've spent nearly 2 decades proving I deserve it. Buying companies, growing profits, building an image. Somewhere along the line, I forgot what the point was." His voice dropped. "You walked in here with mud on your dress from helping a cat. When was the last time I did anything like that? Something that mattered." "It's not too late," Caroline said. "You're young, capable, and you have resources most people only dream of. You could do something truly meaningful, if you chose to." He looked at her, almost pleading. "Then help me. Show me how to be useful, not just successful. How to care about things that matter instead of things that impress." Caroline studied him, the handsome, confident man who suddenly seemed lost despite all he had. "Why me?" she asked. "You could hire consultants, experts, whole teams of people to guide you." He smiled faintly. "Consultants tell me what I want to hear. You tell me what I need to hear. You already have." Julian reached across the table, stopping just short of her hands. "From the moment you walked in, mud-stained, unapologetic, I knew you were different. Most people wear masks. You wear your life. You can't fake that. You can't buy it. It's who you are." Caroline felt her eyes sting. No one had looked at her that way in years, as if she mattered, just as she was. "I'm 59, she said quietly. "I have wrinkles, gray hair, and practical shoes. I live in a small apartment with too many cats. I spend my time at shelters and food banks. I'm not glamorous or sophisticated, and I never will be." Julian smiled gently. "Maybe that's exactly what makes you extraordinary." Caroline shook her head gently. "I'm not what a man like you should want." "You're wrong," Julian said firmly. His voice had a quiet conviction that made her look up. "You're everything a man like me should want, but never knew how to find. You're genuine, compassionate, and brave enough to walk into a fancy restaurant wearing mud-stains because helping others mattered more to you than impressing me. You're exactly what I've been looking for." The rest of the dinner passed in a blur. Soft laughter, real conversation, and a comfort Caroline hadn't felt in years. Julian opened up in ways that surprised her. He spoke about his lonely childhood, about parents who valued achievement more than love, about building a perfect life that felt hollow inside. Caroline shared her own truths too, her fears of growing old alone, her doubts about whether her volunteer work truly made a difference, or if it was just her way of avoiding loneliness. "I'm lonely too," Julian admitted quietly. "I'm surrounded by people all day, but every night, it's just silence. The women I date want Julian Whitmore, the CEO, not the man who doesn't know who he is without the company." Caroline looked at him for a long moment. "Then maybe," she said softly, "we could be lonely together for a while, until we figure out how not to be." Julian's smile changed his whole face. "I'd like that. Starting now. Come somewhere with me." He paid the bill, barely touched, and walked her to his sleek car. It looked completely out of place when they arrived across town, in front of the small, aging building Caroline knew so well. "Show me," Julian said simply. "Show me what you do. Show me how to help." So she did. She led him inside the shelter, introducing him to the volunteers and families. She watched as he talked to parents struggling to feed their children, as he knelt down to comfort a crying boy while his mother filled out housing papers. His expensive suit grew wrinkled and smudged, but for the first time that night, Julian looked real. Hours later, they sat side by side on the shelter steps under the dim streetlight. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for this. For showing me what actually matters. What will you do with it?" Caroline asked. Everything, he said. Change everything. My foundation, my work, my life. I want to turn all the empty gestures into something real. And, he hesitated, his voice softening, if you'll let me, I'd like you to be part of that. Not as a consultant. As someone I care about. Someone I'm falling in love with. Caroline's breath caught. You don't even know me. He smiled faintly. I know enough. I know you showed up tonight covered in mud because you were too busy helping others to care about appearances. I know you're honest in a world built on pretending. And when you walked into that restaurant, I realized I'd spent my life surrounded by everything fake, until I finally saw something real. He reached for her hand, holding it gently. His polished watch gleamed next to her bare wrist, his smooth fingers against her rough ones. They were from different worlds, different ages, different lives, but in that moment, none of it mattered. I'm not going to change who I am, Caroline warned softly. I'll still wear muddy clothes and spend my time with cats and strangers at shelters instead of people at parties. If that's not enough someday, it's better to say so now. Julian shook his head. That's exactly what I want. Someone who reminds me that mud from helping a neighbor is worth more than any designer label. Someone who shows me how to be useful instead of just important. Someone who loves the person I'm trying to become. They sat there in silence, two unlikely souls bound by honesty, kindness, and the strange comfort of being truly seen. Around them, the city buzzed quietly with late-night life, but for the first time in years, neither of them felt alone. The city moved on around them, unaware of the quiet miracle taking place on those shelter steps. Caroline had walked into that restaurant expecting nothing, dressed in a stained dress, ready to be judged, and planning to leave early. But instead of rejection, she found something rare, a man who saw beauty in her honesty, strength in her imperfections, and worth in her simple, unpolished truth. Julian, who had spent years surrounded by luxury and performance, finally found something real. Not in a model or a millionaire, but in a 59-year-old woman who valued compassion over image, people over status, and kindness over appearances. She wore her life on her clothes and her heart on her sleeve, and that was exactly what made her unforgettable. Because sometimes love doesn't come in spite of our flaws, it comes because of them. Sometimes the most beautiful thing we can give another person is the courage to be exactly who we are. Mud stains, wrinkles, and all. And when we stop trying to impress and simply live our truth, we realize that truth alone is more than enough. Sparkling Heart, if this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Tell us in the comments. Has there ever been a time when being your true self led to something unexpectedly beautiful?